At my mom's 60th birthday, she announced that my $5,500 paycheck and all future bonuses would go to the family fund or I'd be cut off. My brother backed her up. I got up, walked out, and a few hours later, they were calling in a panic. "You've got to be kidding," I whispered, my grip on the table so tight that my knuckles had gone pale. But my mom didn't even flinch. There she was, dazzling in this flashy gold dress that I know for a fact I had to buy for her 6 months ago as an early birthday present. She stood confidently at the head of a long table packed with our relatives, raising her glass like she was celebrating a big career move. My older brother, Julian, was right there beside her, nodding along with a smirk and zero shame. "I'm serious," she announced, all smiles like we were at some grand event. "Today is the start of something new. The family fund is our future, and Michael, you're going to be the cornerstone of it." Everyone around laughed, thinking it was some clever toast, like I was in on the joke, like this wasn't some weird financial ambush at a birthday dinner. I got up slowly, the chair scraping on the tiles loudly, like nails on a chalkboard. "You're joking, right?" I said again, looking around. My cousin quickly looked away, and Carla suddenly found her wineglass very fascinating. "No," Mom replied simply, then added with a little shrug, "It's only fair. You've been doing well, and this is what families do. We help each other." Except in our family, help had always been a one-way street, me giving, them taking. Julian crossed his arms and chimed in, "We're trying to build something bigger than just individual success. You owe it to the family." I didn't even bother to reply. I just grabbed my coat from the back of the chair, turned around, and walked out. I could hear my mom calling my name as I headed down the hallway. But I didn't. To stop. Walked right to my car, started it up, and drove off. No real destination, just away from there. A few hours later, sitting in the dark on my bed, my phone started buzzing. First, it was Julian, then Mom, over and over again until they started texting. "Call us back. It's an emergency. You can't just leave like that. Michael, we need to talk. Something's happened." I didn't pick up the phone that night, not even when Mom spammed me with texts trying to fake concern. Not when Julian left a voicemail that started off with, "Mike, calm down," and ended with, "You're being immature." Because this wasn't some new situation. This wasn't just a random outburst during a birthday dinner. This was the result of years and years of quiet exploitation, disguised as love. Let me rewind. I'm 32, a systems engineer at a high-performance cloud architecture firm in Seattle. I take home about $5,500 a month after taxes, plus the bonuses are pretty nice. I'm good at what I do, not flashy, but consistent. I've been managing to pay rent for a small studio in Belltown, living below my means. I budget, save, don't go wild with spending because, for the last 8 years, I've been the one bailing out my family. At first, it was small stuff. "Michael, sweetheart, your brother just needs a little help with his rent this month. He's between jobs." That was when Julian bailed on his third startup gig because he said corporate life killed his creativity. "Michael, darling, can you help us with the down payment on the new family car? We'll pay you back after the tax return." Spoiler alert, they never did. That was 5 years ago. They're still driving that car, still call it ours, like I've even stepped foot in it. Then things got worse. When Dad passed, suddenly, without warning, an aneurysm, I stepped in because someone had to. I was 25, still paying off my student loans, and suddenly I was covering mortgage payments on a house I didn't live in. Julian was grieving, according to Mom, as he jetted off to Cancun with his girlfriend 2 weeks after the funeral. So I paid quietly, steadily, because I thought that's what good sons do. Every time I tried to pull back, Mom would say stuff like, "Your father would be so proud of you," or, "You know, your brother isn't as lucky as you. He needs more support. Support. That word basically meant sacrifice your peace so we don't have to change. Julian blew through 3 failed businesses, never holding a steady job for more than a year. He liked to call himself a serial entrepreneur, but really, he was just a serial spender. Fancy suits, the latest tech gadgets, networking trips to Napa Valley, all bankrolled by me, even if no one came out and said it. One time, he even sent me a Venmo request labeled Family Legacy Expansion for $200. I declined it. He texted, "Wow, way to be a team player." And then 5 minutes later, Mom called me up. "Michael, what's going on with you? Julian's trying to build something and you're being spiteful." That was the moment I realized something pretty ugly. I wasn't really their son. I was the donor, the bank, the one they could guilt into covering for everyone else's irresponsibility. So when that birthday dinner went down, it wasn't a shock. It was just the first time they openly declared it. The family fund wasn't anything new. It had always been there, just used to be unspoken. My paycheck, their needs, my bonuses, their lifestyle, my boundaries, always negotiable. But now they were making it official, treating my role like some kind of job. And the worst part was, they expected me to cheer for it, to toast to it, and to thank them for the privilege of funding their lives. That's why I left without saying another word. The next morning I got a message from my cousin Jess. She's the quiet type, usually stays out of all this drama and family drama, am I right? So, just checking in, because I heard you left the party early. Is everything cool? I shot back a quick reply explaining that they tried to claim my income like it was some sort of inheritance. Then she called me right away. Turns out, after I left, things went haywire. Julian was trying to patch things up with some speech about family unity. Mom started crying, and Uncle Ray made some snide comment about how my generation's all about themselves. Then, right in front of everyone, Julian announced I'd start making regular contributions to the family fund that week. The room went dead quiet because, surprise, I hadn't agreed to squat. They were waiting for me to come back, but when I didn't, they called and panicked. Julian even logged onto our shared family Google Drive, editing a spreadsheet titled Michael's Contributions 2024 Projected, like I was just another line item in their budget. 3 days later, I get an envelope. Not a text, not an email, a typed letter from Mom. She starts with, "Dear Michael, we're worried about you," and goes on to say I embarrassed her at her birthday bash. She talked about how my behavior was hurtful, and if I wanted to stay part of the family, I needed to share my success. She used terms like emotional maturity and financial empathy. She said, "You've always been the steady one. That means you have more responsibility." And the cherry on top, they expected my first contribution by Friday. Julian would supposedly send the routing info. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of how messed up this was. Just entitlement, like I was an employee failing to hit targets. I folded the letter, tossed it in the trash, and decided it was time to make some changes. That night, I barely slept. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was clarity. I'd felt manipulated for so long, leaving felt wrong, but now it felt liberating. I wasn't going to vanish. They wanted a family fund? Fine. I'd give them something unforgettable. I rerouted my paycheck to a new bank account, one they didn't know about, and closed the old one without a peep. Talked to my leasing agent and got a larger one-bedroom. No roommates, no freeloaders. I even made a reservation at Mom's favorite fancy restaurant where she always wanted to go for her birthday. I sent a group chat invite for lunch saying, "Let's talk. Lunch tomorrow, 1 p.m. My treat." Julian quickly gave a thumbs up. Mom replied, "I'm glad you're finally coming around. Bring the first deposit slip, sweetheart." That said it all. They still thought they had me. The next day I showed up in a suit. Not my usual style, but I wanted to look them in the eye as their little fantasy fell apart. Mom was already glowing like royalty at the table, and Julian was casually flipping through spreadsheets. I took my seat without a word. "Michael," Mom started, reaching for my hand, "I knew you'd come around. You're just like your father." Julian slid over a document outlining modest monthly transfers of $10,800. After my expenses, I'd barely have enough left for myself. It didn't stop there. Bonuses over $10,000 would see 70% to the fund, and 60% from any extra work. Modest. Julian smirked, as if he'd presented a great offer. I leaned back, arms crossed. "Okay," I said slowly, "but what exactly does this family fund do?" Mom blinked, caught off guard. "It supports everyone," she stammered. "Everyone." "Nay?" I pressed. She explained about my brother's startup, her sciatica keeping her from work, and Uncle Ray losing his job. "So, not me," I clarified. Mom shifted into her soft, manipulative voice. "Michael, you've always been the strong one." "Exactly," I replied, "and I'm done." Her eyes widened, shocked as I stood up and tossed the contract onto the table. "I'm done funding Julian's failures, done paying for so-called emergencies, and done mixing up love with sacrifice." Mom gasped, "Don't talk to your mother," but I was already walking away, a new resolve in my step. Listen, it was like, "No way. You can't keep making me feel guilty anymore. You can't just call me ungrateful when you've been sucking me dry for so long." Julian got up from his seat, looking all tense. "Dude, relax," he said to me. I turned to him and said, "Come on, you're 35. Time to grow up and get yourself a job. You're not exactly building a legacy here, Julian. You're just trying to hold on to something someone else made." His jaw tightened, and he shot back, "You think you're better than everyone else?" I replied, "No, but I am better than this nonsense." Then I took out a manila folder and plopped it onto the table. "What's in there?" Mom asked, looking curious. "Receipts," I said. "Every single transfer, all the gifts, the loans. You said you'd repay them. It's over $78,000. I did the math." Julian just snorted. "So you're keeping tabs now?" he asked, trying to sound tough. I looked straight at him and said, "Yes, because you never bothered to." I walked away while Mom yelled my name, but I didn't even look back. That night, the messages began to flood in. Julian was saying I embarrassed Mom, that I was acting childish. Mom chimed in too, saying I'd calm down and to just call her. Then there was silence, but only for a couple of days before the panic set in. Julian's startup investors, who were mostly family connections, started pulling out left and right. Apparently, word got around that I wasn't backing the fund anymore. And guess who everyone thought was the main financial supporter? Yup, me. Without my name attached, the whole thing looked like a scam. And it crumbled fast, because that's what it was. Soon, the calls started pouring in from Uncle Ray, then Aunt Carla, and even a voicemail from Mom. It started calm, but ended in tears. "Michael, please," she pleaded, "your brother made a mistake. We just need a bit of help to get through this quarter. We can go over the numbers after." But I was done. I wasn't getting sucked back in. The moment I walked out of that lunch, it was like pulling a key block from a Jenga tower. Everything came crashing down, fast and noisy. I changed my number that very afternoon. No more voicemails from Julian asking if we could talk for a minute. No more messages from Mom saying, "We didn't mean it that way." I wasn't cleaning up their messes anymore. I was done. And for the first time in years, the silence was all mine. And wow, did it feel amazing! But they did not take it well, not even a little bit. By the end of that week, I got an email from Julian titled, "Urgent, please read." His company, which I had been quietly funding for years, was falling apart. 2 investors had already bailed. Their biggest supplier jumped ship when they found out that I, the supposed lead financial backer, was no longer involved. Apparently, Julian had been dropping my name and making pitches without me knowing, saying stuff like, "My brother's got us covered through Q4, and we have 6 figures of runway thanks to family support." All lies, all based on the belief that I would never walk away. Except I did. And the flimsy financial house of cards he built on my name collapsed within days. Mom started calling from burner phones, trying to reach me, but I ignored them all. Then she sent an email with the subject line, "It's not too late to fix this." Fix what? Their complete dependence on me? Their long-standing belief that I was just there to bankroll their lifestyles? There was nothing to fix. There was only freedom to claim. Within 2 weeks, I had moved into my new apartment. It was bigger than I needed, sleek, modern, with a heavy door that locked like a vault. The kind of door no one barges through just to use your Wi-Fi or crash for a weekend. My salary was finally mine. I could buy groceries without having to calculate how much to put aside for Mom's dental work or Julian's emergency phone upgrade. I invested in some new gear for my side hustle. I joined a gym, got some decent sleep, and just breathed. For the first time in ages, I looked in the mirror and didn't see exhaustion staring back at me. I saw me. It was surreal and absolutely beautiful. Then the family started to really show the cracks. Uncle Ray called, that same guy who once told me money flows upward in families, like I was some kind of fountain or something. He wanted to have a word about how I'd handled things. I told him I'd only talk via email. He never got back to me. Aunt Carla sent me a message on Facebook, asking if I was okay. She said Mom was devastated and Julian looked like a ghost. I just left her unread. But Cousin Jess, she was different. She sent me a text saying, "Whatever you said to them, you shook the entire family tree." I chuckled, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel bitter. It felt justified. Then came the breaking point. A month after I cut them off, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Michael," it was Mom. Her voice was small, almost unrecognizable. "I'm at your building. I just want to talk." I almost hung up. Almost. But some small part of me that remembered a time before all the manipulation said, "Give her 5 minutes." That's it. Just 5. She was waiting in the lobby, holding a Tupperware container like she was bringing a peace offering. Inside was my favorite, roast chicken and rice, just like when I was a kid. She didn't smile, didn't beg, just said, "Can we sit?" We found 2 chairs in the corner. I didn't say a word. She started slowly, "I didn't realize what we were doing to you. Not really." I raised an eyebrow. "Took a public meltdown and financial implosion for that, huh?" She winced. I know how that sounds." Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were receipts. Every transaction, every deposit, every transfer I'd made to cover the mortgage. Julian's failed startups. The cash, she said, was a gift. I got a message from a friend, and it was about this sum of $78,450. Julian had apparently been telling her I kept meticulous records, which totally surprised her. She admitted she didn't believe him at first, thinking I was just acting cold. But then she checked out the numbers herself and realized it wasn't about being cold at all. It was pure survival. My own little financial autopsy, if you will. She didn't ask for my forgiveness, and frankly, I didn't expect her to. But she did make it clear she finally understood everything I'd been through. And then she dropped the bombshell, the one statement I never thought I'd actually hear from her. "We used you." Not in the sense of relying on me or seeking help, but straight up used. She confessed that she had convinced herself she was just being a caring mother, but had really viewed me as a persona, an income source. When I tried to stand my ground, she had audaciously called me ungrateful. Her voice wavered with emotion as she apologized, deeply and repeatedly. I was stunned into silence, just absorbing her confession, like a ringing bell in a quiet church. She left a folder beside me and then quietly exited the room. About a week later, I got a straightforward text from Julian. No melodrama, just the simple words, "You were right, I'm starting over for real this time," accompanied by a photo of him in a high-visibility vest, holding a clipboard at a bustling warehouse. He was working a minimum-wage job and putting in the real effort. I didn't reply, but I couldn't help but smile. They never understood that cutting them off wasn't about payback. It was about healing and reclaiming a life that had been slowly drained of its vibrancy, one Venmo request after another. Then last Friday, I treated myself to a nice dinner out. Just me, a table for one, a candle, and a glass of wine. I sat in that peaceful solitude, leisurely scrolling through apartment listings, not because I had to move, but simply because for the first time I actually could if I wanted. Out of the blue, a message from Jess popped up. "Proud of you, you lit the match. Let them feel the heat." And you know what? I did. I still do. They always thought I would crawl back. Each time I set a boundary, they would push until I eventually gave in. Every no eventually became a maybe, and every proclamation of "this is the last time" was followed by just one more exception. But not anymore. This time, I vanished and stayed gone. It drove them nuts for a while. Mom bombarded me with texts, calls, emails, voicemails, all laced with tears about how close we used to be. Julian attempted a guilt trip with a string of messages, trying to rope me back into that role they had stuck me in for so long. The fixer, the financier, the fallback plan. I ignored them all. Eventually, the silence lasted far longer than they anticipated, and panic set in. Their usual strategy failed, and I didn't rush back to remedy it. The side effect? My life instantly improved. My bank account stopped hemorrhaging money over things that weren't my problem. My weekends finally became my own. I found myself sleeping better, eating better, and just generally feeling happier. I wasn't merely surviving anymore, I was actually healing. I finally had the space to build a life for myself, not just to fill their needs. I rediscovered old hobbies, took a genuine vacation, and indulged in things I used to dismiss as unnecessary luxuries, because someone else's crisis always took precedence. I even started dating again, and it was refreshing to meet someone who asked about my passions before my paycheck. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something extraordinary and unfamiliar. Peace. A couple of months later, a letter arrived from Mom. It was handwritten, streaked with tear stains, packed with lines like, "I didn't realize," and "We were just trying to survive," and all about Julian's struggles. She labeled it all a misunderstanding, but I saw it as a decade of relentless financial pressure that wasn't open to questioning. She pleaded with me to come home for Thanksgiving, saying the family missed me and that things just didn't feel right without me there. Funny thing was, for once, everything in my world felt exactly as it should. Julian fell off the radar not too long after. Jess informed me he'd moved in with a friend once his startup went under. No more investors, no income, just a mountain of debt. She remarked that he was finally coming to grips with real Lynn, if without the safety net I once provided. Good. Let him grow under the same burdens I had to shoulder alone. Maybe now he'll get it, or maybe he won't. But it's no longer my responsibility to rescue him. The truth is, they never loved me for who I was, only for what I could do for them. The moment I stopped contributing, stopped sacrificing my well-being, they turned frosty and accused me of betrayal. In their eyes, saying no was the ultimate offense. But I'd rather be disliked for walking away than loved for being a doormat. They're now living with that reality, and I'm living with mine. Just last week, I sat solo in my favorite cafe, sipping on the most overpriced coffee ever, with a grin stretching across my face. Not because of the lovely view or the serene quiet around me, but because every dollar I spent that day was mine, earned by me, spent on me. Not sucked into a seemingly bottomless pit of familial obligation, not swiped under the pretense of togetherness, just mine. It might not seem like much to many people, but to me, that was pure freedom. So here's the heart of the matter. You don't owe your family your paycheck. You don't owe them your peace. You certainly don't owe them your entire existence just because you share the same DNA. Once they start seeing you as an asset rather than a person, you owe them nothing. They labeled me cold and heartless, called me ungrateful. Fine, let them think that. I'd choose being called ungrateful over being used any day. I'd choose solitude over feeling drained. Above all, I'd choose freedom. Complete, powerful, unapologetic freedom. And that's exactly what I have now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy hearing stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.